If you're continuing to work in a cycle of burnout, not recognizing the impact on you in the work that you're doing, you're never going to be able to do that for your staff. Building self-awareness in terms of how am I taking care of myself? How am I showing up to the work? How is my energy and the way that I'm dealing with my own emotional states impacting this environment? So do a lot of self-reflection, get the support that you need, whether that be coaching, whether that be therapy. Find the supports necessary in order to figure out how to take care of yourself and how to become more self-aware.
Welcome to the Optimized Workplace. I'm your host, Fran Dean-Bishop. Today, I had the absolute pleasure of welcoming a powerhouse phenom leader, Marisol Solarte-Erlacher, a renowned trauma expert and resilience consultant, named one of Colorado's top most powerful women in business. Isn't that amazing? With over 20 years of experience as a licensed psychotherapist, Marisol helps organizations foster thriving cultures. She also hosts the award-nominated podcast, Resilience and Resistance, showcasing resilient leaders who have overcome trauma. What a powerhouse. I love this. I'm so excited for this topic. So for today's conversation, we're talking about the hidden cost of workplace trauma. What a powerful topic. And we'll discuss strategies for fostering resilience and creative supporting environments that enhance both employee well-being and organizational success. Without further ado, Marisol, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Fran. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, I'm excited to hear your words and pearls of wisdom. So let's get right into it, because I think there's most of our listeners who are either C-suite, definitely are leaders, running businesses, and all of that in between, have seen some change, shift, layering of the workplace today, which is very different that we saw 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even 10 years ago. So if you can set the stage for us, Marisol, and discuss or explain workplace trauma, what it means, and some of the root causes, I think that's a great place to start.
Oh, yeah, that's such a great question. I think the easiest point in our timeline to really look to is the pandemic. If we think about in 2020, when everything shut down and we were all having a shared traumatic, from my perspective, experience, I think it really highlighted some things that are happening in the workplace or that have been happening in the workplace. I think primarily it's how the workplace responds to an individual experience can be very challenging. And so part of what happened for me and how I came into this work was through that moment in time. Was during COVID. I had friends who were CEOs and executive directors reach out to me and ask if I could come speak to their employees, because they were experiencing the trauma of the pandemic in their own personal lives. And they were also dealing with the trauma of having to really adjust how they did work and what that meant for them. So having to adjust to all of those different aspects was really challenging for leaders to figure out how to address. How do we respond to the personal experiences of our employees, and then how that's going to impact the workplace. And so that's really how I came into the work and started to think about how do you start to address these types of traumas in the workplace. And then concurrently with that, what really came into my I think awareness around that time was I have lots of groups of very powerful, supportive, amazing women here in Denver that I'm close to. And we were having a conversation. One of our friends, I think she got like 40 under 40 or some kind of award, and we're all celebrating her. And so, there are all these women around the table, and specifically a lot of women of color. And one of the things they talked about was, in order for us to get to these positions, we have to experience some trauma. And so we started to have a deep conversation about that, about, not only trauma that can be related to gender, so being someone who identifies as a woman in the workplace, and then being a woman of color, and what that means just in terms of I think what I term, not my term, but what I talk about often is racial battle fatigue. So having to be a person of color in a space that was not designed for them. And then again, I think that having to be a woman of color in a position of leadership can be very isolating and can be very difficult. And so there's a lot of trauma and workplace trauma that comes with that. So I think there are lots of different intersections. And it can absolutely contribute to the well-being of an organization and how it's able to become sustainable and profitable.
Yeah, Boy, oh boy, talk about a dense topic.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You're kind of making me having to recalibrate here on the fly. Boy, oh boy, yeah, I could write a book. I could write a couple books, right? Several,
I
actually.
hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, yeah. We just
Yeah.
did 27 years and had a big celebration, and people ask me all the time, "Why did you start, and what keeps you going?" And I'm like, "You don't have enough time.
I
You don't have enough time. You don't have enough
know.
wine. You don't. You just don't know."
I
But
know.
that said, I think that's such a rich topic and so layered, right? And so
Mhm.
complex and perplexing. And I love the fact that you've built these communities so you're constantly in conversation around,
Yeah,
again, how that's changing. I'd
right.
love you to talk a little bit about the implications of these traumas, right? And what
Mhm.
it's costing corporate America. And you can talk about it from the ESG component of it. You can talk about it from the
Mhm.
microaggressions component of it, or you can
Mhm.
just talk about it from the perspective of the fact that we've lost so many women out of the workplace
Mhm.
during post COVID, but whatever
Mhm.
landscape, what are the implications and the largest implications you see as a result of these traumas?
Yeah, I think that primarily, most companies and organizations want efficiency. So they want to be able to do the work that they're set out to do in the most efficient way and the most profitable way. And I think whenever we have, however, whatever happens within that organizational system that's impacting the individual, it's going to impact those efficiencies. It's just the way it is. I think that primarily when you think about how people's mental health and their overall well-being, whether that be from personal experiences, our collective experience, or whether that be like you're talking about microaggressions or traumas that are related to our identities, I think what happens is people are impacted by that, and it impacts the way they're able to show up to work. It makes it difficult for people to feel as though they can invest in the work in a meaningful way. I think, the cost in terms of productivity has to do with people taking time off because of,
Hmm.
their own mental wellness. I work with a lot of different companies and organizations and talk to a lot of staff members. And so much of what they talk about is like wanting to take significant amounts of time off. And that
Yeah.
impacts the way that we're able to come together and be effective in the work that we do. I think also people come to work because they want meaning. Most of the time we're coming to our work not just, obviously we do it to support ourselves and to have an income, but most of the time people want to create meaning with their work. And so if in some way they feel like they're impacted personally, or in some way that the organization or company is not responding to their well-being, it impacts the way that they feel that they're creating meaning in the work that they're doing because they don't feel valued. So I think there are lots of ways that it impacts organizationally, but primarily I think productivity and efficiency is huge, because it really impacts the way that the work is done. I know when I'm in organizations where they're really honed in on how people are feeling, their well-being, really addressing how people are able to show up to work and feel safe, psychologically safe.
Yeah.
Uh, those are the organizations and companies that are probably the best performing.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think as leaders, we tend to think people just need to do their jobs, but you can't take the human out of the work. And
Yeah.
so it becomes it impacts in a significant way.
Yeah. I'm wondering. So we have a wide array of people that listen to the Optimized Workplace, and if you're listening, remember listening to us on your favorite station. Shameless plug. But I'm curious. We always talk about the really harsh stories, or what hits the
Yeah.
news is the stories that are
Mhm.
horrible, bombastic, major trauma that results in some kind of catastrophe. I'm curious if you could share maybe one of the highlights of your work that you've seen where there's impact, where it shows up, the company recognizes it before things get to to an almost like a turning point where they can't correct, right, course correct, where you've seen, okay, we see it, we recognize it, they made some shifts and they really saw a positive effect of that. Is there a story you could
Mm.
share?
Mm. Oh gosh, that's such a great question. I think it's been interesting. So I'll share two stories. I think maybe they come together to, I think, highlight what you're trying to get at. I think usually when I'm called in, it's typically when there's a a crisis where they've kind of gone past the point of no return and they're trying to figure out a way to come back. So I have an organization that I'm currently working with. And I think one of the things that they've seen is that they're really trying to figure out how to deal with two things. They're how they deal with some of the trauma that they work with a very traumatized population. And so how do they deal with the trauma of their staff members working with these traumatized populations? And then also, sometimes they share identities with the individuals that they're working with. So it can touch a very, very personal part of their lives. And so that a lot of people, they were experiencing a high turnover of their staff because they weren't dealing with those specific issues. And so part of what happened, and I think what continues to happen, is it's really difficult because they're trying to figure out how do we course correct now that people are kind of past that point of no return. And that becomes very difficult because then you're entrenched in a lot of cultural patterns and a lot of individual patterns that are difficult to turn around. But I'm working with this organization that similarly has staff members that work with very traumatized populations. And I'm currently starting a project with them where we're doing multi-leveled trainings for leadership. So for the VP, for their middle management, and then for the staff. And part of the reason that they want to do that is they not because they're in crisis, but they understand the need to be able to give them the tools that are going to help them not get to that point. And so I think that organization, I can see how the leadership is so highly invested in the staff. And as I've interviewed management and the managers and supervisors, they are also very impacted by that because they see the investment and they feel very motivated and they feel very, very committed to the mission.
If you are enjoying this segment or any of the segments that you've heard thus far on the Optimized Workplace, please be sure to join us here below and just follow us on the Optimized Workplace. We really want to not only drive our viewers and listeners, but we also want to share it. So if there's others that you know, like us, please here, join and listen, subscribe on a regular basis, but also share the podcast. We'd love to have you back. I think one of the things I'm hearing is that there's a proactivity mindset with that organization, but I'm curious if you're willing to share, what characterizes an organization that is willing to be proactive, right? Because lots of companies claim that they are, but they are clearly not, right? They're very reactive. So what characteristics show up for you in that organization that make them so proactive to address this now?
Yeah, I think that they see the value in investment in their staff that's not just a one-off. So I think a lot of companies and organizations will call me in and say, our staff is really burnt out. Can you come and do a mental wellness workshop for, just one session? And I think that this organization, I think, has the mindset of, we see the value in the work that they do, and we understand that we want them here for the long term because they are invested in the mission of this organization. So I think that reciprocal relationship of we see your investment and we're going to invest in you. And I tell leaders this all the time, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcast, is your investment and the way that you feel and the way that you show up has an impact on all of your staff, even people that you never have contact with. It's going to impact them. And so that investment, I think, shows up in the staff knowing that, you're not just investing in the leadership training, you're investing in us. And I think part of the way that I really try to plan the trainings is to really think about what are the staff telling me that they need so that I can help the managers learn those skills to help support them in the long term. So it becomes much more all about sustainability.
Yeah, I love that. So again, let's stay on this because I don't want you to lose your train of thought on the next story, but I think so important. And my clients will tell you, I say this all the time, I don't do one-off, right? We've gotten to a point in our work and the work that we've done and the millions of lives that we touch that one-offs just don't work. And if you're looking for one-offs, then you really aren't looking to create change. Save your money.
Save your money.
Save your money.
Yes.
It's not worth it. Don't go spend the $25,000 or the $50,000 or whatever that you think you're investing in to make a difference if you're not really committed to the sustainable change and impact of the organization. And you're not committed to those employees, because the thing that's worse, and you've seen this, I'm sure, as an expert in your field, I've certainly seen it in 27, 30 years, that people can tell. employees
Yeah.
know
Oh,
when you're not really
100%.
investing and save that money and go put it towards, I don't know, a golf outing. I know that sounds, satirical, but it's true,
No,
right?
it's true.
Because
Absolutely.
it's worse. It's almost like you're starting to go down a path of stating that you're going to deal with something really important like mental health,
Hmm.
trauma, which is even more impactful. My
Hmm.
husband's a first responder. I get that 100%.
Yeah.
They do a lot of peer support work and things like that. But don't even start to spoon feed because you're really you're
Yes.
uncovering a monster, which could be worse.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. I think you have to create the sustainability for any type of wellness program that you're doing. And some people think, well, we have some like employee resources and we let people know that they have access to them. And that's really and all of those things are very valuable, but like you're saying, it's about the investment in their overall long-term well-being. And so whether that be policy, whether that be, again, continue leadership training and really helping the staff understand what the commitment is of the organization, it really does make an absolute difference because people feel that you are invested in my overall well-being. And when people feel valued and cared for, that's when you get the best work out of them.
I'm telling you. And you get their loyalty.
Yes.
Their integrity shows like all the
Yes.
things we talk about that are so important shows up.
Yeah.
That employee will fall on us on a sword for that company because they
Exactly.
know the company really cares about them. And that's what we all want inevitably,
Yes.
but it goes back to how you're starting out. So I love that. So please
Yeah.
share your second story. I don't want you to forget sharing that with us.
Well, I think what I also see in organizations, I think so. I think there's the ones that bring me in for a crisis, and those never work out. And I think the organizations that have actually brought me in and they're trying to create more sustainable systems, so those are the ones that actually have more effectiveness. I actually have worked with this company, and they're a startup,
Hmm.
and I've done a lot of work with them around team building, and they're very healthy, communicative, um, just very happy about being in the positions that they are. I'm very committed to the mission of the company and the startup. And they were going through a significant change where they were going to go from a staff of 20 to 200 over the course of
Hmm.
2 years, which is,
Okay.
I mean, thinking about change management, that's huge because it changes the whole dynamic of the
Mm.
team and how people are able to communicate, what that looks like in a remote model. So they were really, I think the thing that I saw in them was that they had so much loyalty to the CEO and not
Mhm.
that and to the mission of the organization, but they were so committed to her vision because she was so committed to investing in them in this period of change. And so it wasn't about let's come in and do something related to crisis. It was really about I know that they'll be impacted, whether that be, good or bad. And I want them to know that I'm going to support this transition for them.
Oh my goodness. I'm just loving this conversation so much. I was just telling Marisol before we started is that, I when I started the optimized workplace, it really was a passion project of mine just to have
Yeah.
conversations and keep the lens open on trends. But it's just, I love powerful, and I'm not just saying this to blow up her head. You guys know I don't blow up people's heads. Um, but I love talking to people who really get it, who are really entrenched in their work, who are
Yeah.
authentic to their work. And it's so obvious, Marisol, that you are
Oh, thank
so
you.
connected to make an impact. I mean, your work is really real. I can just tell. I mean, I know that you probably create a ripple wherever you go, wherever you walk,
Oh, thank
and
you,
whoever
Fran. I
you
appreciate
work
that.
with. I just love that. I could talk to you all day because I'm learning
I know.
too.
No,
As a
and
leader, I have a team of employees, and it's important to me too in terms of how I show up. So I'm
yeah.
learning in this conversation as well, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, yeah, and I love talking to people like you who are really invested because it makes me more passionate about the work that I do.
I love it. So
Yeah.
we're having a female love fest right now. I love it. I love it. Okay,
So
so let me get back to the work. Let me get back to the podcast. So,
yeah, yeah.
question for you: if you are a leader, you're running a company or you're running a team, 200
Mhm,
people, 2,000 people, whatever, and you
mhm,
want to begin to foster this supportive work environment, and you don't want to just talk the talk, you want to walk the walk. Are
mhm.
there, two or three tips that you could give to our leaders who are listening in right now as to how they even begin to start down this path of a supportive
Mhm.
work environment and move it forward?
Yes, absolutely. I think first and foremost, the thing that I talk to leaders about all the time is self-awareness. Is to really figure out what's happening for you in this moment in time.
Mm.
So if you're continuing to work in a cycle of burnout, not recognizing the impact that on you in the work that you're doing, you're never going to be able to do that for your staff. So really building in self-awareness in terms of how am I managing, like you were saying, self-care. How am I taking care of myself? How am I showing up to the work? How is my energy and the way that I'm dealing with my own emotional states impacting this environment? I think that's number one. So do a lot of self-reflection, get the support that you need, whether that be coaching, whether that be therapy. Find the supports necessary in order to figure out how to take care of yourself and how to become more self-aware. I think secondly, it's really about investing in the people that are doing the hardest work in terms of like first line. Like if you want to think about a first step. So like, for example, as I was talking about this organization, their managers are the ones who are the ones that are constantly in contact with the people who have the most challenges. And so really think about investing in them and giving them the resources and skills that they need to become more resilient. And, making sure that they're getting as much of the support that they need in order to make the work sustainable for others. And I think make the long-term investment. So I think the thing that people don't see is they don't know how to measure the return on investment when they're thinking about the well-being of their staff. So I think about measures of like changing the measures of performance evaluation. Ask staff, how are you taking care of yourself? How are you showing up to this work? How are you, really starting to think about how they start evaluating staff members as opposed to just efficiency. And I think that all those things I think become like maybe small steps in order to make a big impact.
Yep. Okay, guys. So that was the rewind. That was the rewind nugget. If you missed it, I'm going to give it back to you. That was so valuable, Marisol, because it really is that, right? So she mentioned self-awareness. You guys know I talk a lot about EI, how important that is. But that nugget of self-awareness, you cannot help anybody unless you've got oxygen masters on yourself first. And it's got to be clear. You are aware of where you are, how you're showing up, what you're doing. I love the piece. We saw a lot of this during COVID, and it's starting to wane down. But companies investing in the people who are holding up the ship.
Yes,
that's what I get, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to invest in those people holding up the ship. If you're managing 2,000 people, how are you taking care of that leader?
Right, exactly.
And it's not about just numbers. So that was gold. And then I think the platinum to that, which I love, she said, I need to think about this with our own company, is asking people, how are you managing and taking care of yourself? What is the metric that you begin to look at? Because it's easy to throw people resources. I'm so I'm over apps. I'm so over apps.
Oh, girl, apps.
Okay.
I tell you what,
I'm like,
I know.
Seriously, they want to throw an app on everything or a resource. Oh, we've got 100 resources and 100 apps. And you wonder why people don't.
No one wants to look at an app. I don't.
I'm like, come on. So that was gold. I love that. Right. Ask people, what are you doing? What have you done today? What are you doing this week? Are we giving you the space?
Yes.
And the ability to do whatever is your avenue of choice to self-care and take care of yourself. I love that. So fantastic. Yes. All right. So that's a great place to bring us all the way through the end zone. 2 questions for you.
Sure.
We'd love to know, how does Marisol ensure that Marisol is whole so that she can take care of others? And is there any passion project that's wrapped into that for 2025 for you?
Yes, there's so many. So I think first and foremost, I had a crisis of burnout probably about 3 years ago that really made me reevaluate how I take care of myself. And so I am so committed to my self-care. So I really check in with myself all the time around, is this sustainable work for you? And if it's not, then reevaluate it. So the primary focus for me is how I'm feeling. If I'm not feeling good about something, then I don't do it. And I try to fill my life with things that make me feel good. So for example, like today, I have some work to do, but I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling a little tired. I'm going to actually rest and maybe take a walk and think about how I take care of myself today. So constant reevaluation. I really think about doing 2 things that make me feel good throughout the day, like what are some things that I can do that actually make me feel good and not hyper focus on overworking myself. And I think the passion project for me currently, and this is probably a whole other topic, but I just started a new business, which is really exciting. And so I'm super
Mm.
excited about that. And this is the first time I'm actually starting a new business with someone else. So I'm starting it with a friend and colleague. It's really been fun because it's fun to be creative with someone else. As sometimes as a
Fabulous.
solo person starting
Yes.
businesses,
Yes.
it can be a little it can be daunting. So I'm super excited about that.
Oh, that's amazing. What's the business? You have to tell us. Don't leave us in
Yeah, yeah.
suspense.
So the name of the business is Cultura Leadership, and we do nonprofit executive director search. So we're essentially like a search firm for nonprofit organizations who are looking to make a transition in leadership, and we also do a lot of other leadership support.
That's phenomenal. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so excited for you. It's nothing
Yeah.
like a new projects and
Yeah,
all
I
that
know.
new gooey stuff. So remember that when you hit the first wall.
I know exactly. I'm like, okay, let's keep this energy going. And I love the
Yeah.
creativity. I mean, that's really what brings me to this work is like the creativity of it. Like I love dreaming and thinking about what could be next. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so missing. We don't do enough of that. I took time last week to actually block out my calendar for
Mhm.
creative, time. And I put strategy as the creative word last year, and I never did any of it. So this year I just created. I'm like, no, I'm blocking time for creativity. And I love what you said, Marisol, like just being present to what I need today. So if I need a
Mhm.
walk,
Mhm.
if I need to, go do a hike, if I just need to sit in the sun and just get in some vitamin D,
Yeah.
or go to a coffee shop. My thing is, I love to go to coffee shops and just watch people. They do that a lot in
Yeah.
Europe, but we don't do that here. We're
I
always busy,
know.
busy, busy. But I feel like you can learn so much just being around or surrounded by energy. And so I like to do that. Just go people watch sometimes.
I
Yeah.
love that because I think that's whenever I go to Paris, that's the thing that I love the most is
Hmm.
cafe sitting and and people
Yeah.
watching. But I forget to do that here. So I love
Yeah, so
that.
I love
Yeah.
that. I'm so excited for you. But this has been so phenomenal. So we have to have you back, team. We have to bring her back in
I would love to be
2025.
back.
The work you do is so needed, but it's also beneficial to hear how you approach that work because I think
Mhm.
that helps the leaders then think about how do they begin to move the needle a little bit for themselves. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing and just
Uh,
making an impact that you are. It's
oh,
very rewarding to talk to someone like yourself. So thank you so much for
oh.
being with us.
Thank you so much, Fran. Thank you so much for having me.
And best wishes for you for a fantastic 2025.
Oh, you as well.
And thank you for listening to us today on the Optimized Workplace. Again, I'm your host, Fran Dean-Bishop. And remember, it's many and that small, monumental moments in your day that make the biggest difference in your life. Take care, everyone.